right. Great crowd here today. Glad everybody could make it. And thank you, Guenther, for joining us today. This is pretty exciting. So let's start off with, we're going to focus this conversation, this being a business school, it's in the business side of things and kind of keep it going that direction. But I want to start off with a fun, easy one. Did you have a nickname in high school?
No, it's no nickname. No, thanks, Bill. Not now. Hello to everyone and good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with we're going to start on the early side of things and kind of move forward from there. But you started into racing. How did you get started in racing? What was your first foray into that?
First foray was when I was 21 years old. I always liked racing cars, and where I come from, it's northern Italy in the mountains. There is no racing. There is not a culture of racing cars or anything like it. A lot of skiing and stuff like this. But how I started, I always loved racing cars and watched them. And when I finished my national service, I want to do something different, and I saw an advert in a magazine, and I just wrote a letter to the company. It was a company called Masterelli in Europe, in Belgium, and they were looking for mechanics, and I applied for a job there, and they wrote back to me. That was, we are talking 1986 now, so a long time ago. I think none of you were born at that time, so, but I got an answer. I went there for an interview. And, they called me back a few days later and said that they would like that I start to work there. And that was my start in motor racing.
So when you have an engineering background in the sense that you took some engineering classes and actually dropped out of your engineering class, to what extent when you thought about doing this, I mean,
that's not my daughter.
You think about this, how did that affect the way you were approaching the motorsport world from an engineering perspective? Or like we think about here credentialing for being an MBA or whatever, and that helps us in the workforce. How did you face that entering that space?
I think what we don't have to forget, in 1986, the world was a different place, and especially industries like motorsport, they were not developed industries. It was more like if you liked it, you did it. It was like you didn't. At the time, I think there was very few people with degrees in motorsport. Because it was not actually seen as a proper career, and you could not have, like now, universities have got. You can go to a university and study motorsport in England, even in Indianapolis now, in Italy. It's a career choice. At the time, it was just a choice. This is what I want to do. I try to do it, and let's do it. It was a lot simpler, everything. So and less sophisticated. So therefore, I just liked it, and I started to do it. And you didn't think about education or anything about it. You just did it, and then moved on and got into your next job and developed within the job. I mean, most of the learning was done within the job. It was just different. You couldn't do this, what, for example, I did now in our days anymore. It's just not possible anymore because the world has become a lot more better and more sophisticated.
Yeah. So just jumping forward, because I think obviously at Booth, we're known for entrepreneurial business side of things. And one of the things I liked a lot about your book is it's a management book as much as it is anything else.
It's saying how you should not do it.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Like, say that one way or the other.
You are thinking it's
good to learn from mistakes as it is from all the good side of things. But what I thought was really interesting and more that I wanted to dive into that's not in the book is how you started the team to begin with. And specifically for the MBA students, one of the things you said you did not have was a PowerPoint deck, which I think would be foreign to most of the students in this room. What did you have, and how did you make your pitch?
I had a PowerPoint, but it was 7 pages long, and a very simplistic one because I'm not good at PowerPoint, and I don't have the patience to do it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I know that, Professor, but anyway, how it started. I need to give a little bit of background. I moved to the United States. We're living there since next year. It will be 20 years in North Carolina. And I came over to open up the NASCAR team for Red Bull at the time. And then when that ended, I opened up my own company. I've got a composite company, which I still co-own. My business partner is running the day-and-day business for it, but I still majority owner. And I did that one. And then in Formula One, when the financial crisis hit in 2009, a lot of the big teams stopped doing it. BMW, Toyota, and Honda, they stopped, and F1 needed new small teams to start. And there were 4 new startup teams which got a license. And one of them was a team called USF1, which was based 20 minutes where I live, or where my company was. And my company did some work for them. And I always thought the idea was good, but they didn't have the expertise to do it. You know, you need an expertise to go into F1. And at the time, Bill Ecclestone still was the boss of F1. And he called me up asking if they can make it to the start of the season or not. And obviously I could see that they couldn't. And if you don't make it to the start of F1 when you get the license, you lose your license. That's it, you're done. You know, so all the money invested, you cannot use it anywhere else. So the investor in that USF1 team, a guy called Chad Hurley, he was one of the founders of YouTube, called me up. I didn't know the guy. Out of the blue, he called me up and said, "Hey, Guenther, you seem to be knowing about F1. What do you think about what I'm doing?" And I told him, "I don't think you make it to the start of the season." And he was aware of that, knowing that if he doesn't make it, his team, he will lose his investment. And he said, "Would you have an idea how I can save this and get to the start of the season?" And I said, "Let me think a little bit." I thought a little bit about, and then said, actually telephoned a few people, and I said, there is actually one of the other teams, of the other 3 teams which got a license, which were developing a car, which had the car finished 90% in Italy, was a Spanish team, but they didn't have any money anymore. So if somebody found the money to finish that car, you could start the next year. So he asked me if I could try to broker a deal for him, you know, and I said, I will try, you know, but they cannot promise because it's brokering. So I went to Italy because the company doing the car, the owner was a friend of mine, you know, and a long story short, we couldn't do that because the Spanish people found the money and they finished the car and they started the season. So they didn't lose their license, obviously, you know. So it didn't happen. But while I was there, I went to see Stefano Domenicali, which at the time was the team principal at Ferrari. Now he's the CEO of F1 because he was a good friend. And he told me a little bit about what is happening in F1. And he said, if these teams don't make it to the start, what F1 is thinking to sell customer cars. You know, from Ferrari or whoever was there, Williams, they sell cars to a team and you just have to run the cars, which makes the job a lot more easy than developing everything himself. And on my way back, I thought actually that would be a good idea. And there where I started to put together a business plan doing that one. Again, a long story short, customer cars never materialized because the other 3 teams made it to the start. So they had enough teams, you know. But what I learned out of that actually there is a way to do it different than the other teams which did everything themselves. You buy as much as you're allowed by the regulation from an existing team, and makes it a lot more secure that you make it to the start, a lot less risky, and also financially more viable because you need to spend less money. So I developed that business plan and went around the United States trying to find an investor, you know, and obviously I got quite a few passes on it, which is to expect it. But I always told people at the time, Formula One was not what you guys know. A Formula One team was worth what somebody was prepared to pay for it. And sometimes it was $1. Some teams change hands for $1. But now the smallest one is worth over $1 billion. So the interest needed to be from somebody who didn't look to have a business basically making money, but wanted a sports team, you know. And that's what I always told the people. I'm not saying that you make money. This is, but I can say you, if you want an F1 team, I can do it. And this is how I'm going to do it, you know, and showed them how to do it. And then I found Gene Haas, which said, I spoke with him for 1.5 years until he decided, yeah, let's do it. And then I applied for a license and got the license in 2014.
It was unique how you set up Haas. You had a special hook or angle to this, and like we think about when students pitch entrepreneurial ideas, it's always like, what's the hook? What makes you different? What was special about either your plan or Guenther? What was special about it?
Just the business model. As I said, when you normally everybody started an F1 team and they did everything themselves. And I take a very simple example. Steering box or a steering rack. It's the mechanism that makes the wheel steer. In Formula One, it's a very complex part, you know, and to develop that one, it takes, millions of dollars and a long time and a lot of people. In the end, if you develop your own steering rack, guess what? You got the same steering rack as the other 9 teams, not any better, because that doesn't make the difference. But you spend a lot of money. And my approach was, whatever is in the regulation and you're allowed to buy from an existing team, let's buy it from an existing team, because you save a lot of time and you save a lot of money. That was the special thing. Just that that business model, nobody applied to it, because everybody thought you're not allowed to do it, because the regulations say you have to build your own car. But it also says some of the parts you don't have to build your own. Nobody ever went in to do this, because, engineers want to do everything themselves and think they always can do it better, and sometimes you have to say, yeah, tell me why you're going to be better. No, you're just going to do the same and making me spend 10 times the money like when I buy it. It's the same like, why people don't start a business building iPhones, because Apple is so far ahead to catch them up. You will never catch them up. And it's the same in F1. If you can get the technology from an existing team, which is doing this since 50 years, for sure they have an edge on you, because it's very difficult. The technology is very high. So that was the business model. And it worked. And once we started to do it that way, other teams realized, actually, it sounds stupid, but it's actually pretty smart, because, and then they started to say, why are we doing it all ourselves? And some teams tried, like Toro Rosso at the time, which now Racing Bulls, got a lot of parts from Red Bull Racing. They tried to copy it, but what they did as well, behind us, the regulations, they kept on taking things away which you were allowed to buy, because all the other teams said, Haas has got an advantage. They spent half the money we spent and they've got the same stuff, and that wasn't fair in their opinion. So all the loopholes behind us were closed. And the good thing in Formula One is if somebody finds out what you're doing, but it's legal, they cannot change tomorrow. There is a governance in place that over a period of time you can change, and it's a voting system what is changed. So you got some leeway to continue to do what you're doing for a while, So we always try to stay ahead of that wave, and until we could ramp up that we could do it ourselves, and that was what was different to anybody else. And therefore, I think Haas is still around today, because all the other 3 teams which got a new license in 2010, they were gone after 3 years, because they were so far off, because they just couldn't catch up. And all the investors, and it's normal with investors, either they run out of money or the enthusiasm if you don't have immediate success. Because it's normal to say, why do I do this? I spent hundreds of millions to be last, to be ridiculous. Why would I do that? And they all went out of business. And the only team around is Haas, and this is thanks to that business model.
Well, what you call loopholes, Booth, we call arbitrage opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So can you tell me in your slide deck how much money you were asking?
I asked 70 million in the beginning. 70 million for the first 2 years. Setting it up in the first year, which obviously was a fraction what the big teams spent. The big teams at the time, because there was no budget cap in that period. But at the time, I think they spent between 300 and 400 million, but that they ramped up immediately, because what happened before the budget cap in F1, the teams just said, again, the engineers, we just need more money and then we win, And, some of the teams spent in excess, let's say in 2018 and 19, in excess of $500 million just on the car, which is a lot of money to go racing.
So you talk about the fact that it was a year and a half that you had to keep talking to Gene before he decided to pull the trigger. And at one point, I think you said, I don't know if it was the word shit or get off the pot or something like that was the phrase you used. What do you think that thought process was like? And what was it like for you going through that year and a half, constantly answering questions and thinking about this? And like, at what point do you think, my gosh, we're never going to do this?
It came to the point because it was like in the beginning, and I always said to Gene, this is not, I don't depend on this, because I was setting up my own company. I have my day-to-day job. This was more like a pet project, which I like to do, but it was not, my life didn't depend on it, I always made that one clear. And, as you said, after a while, it was like, I spoke with Gene and he spoke hours and hours, and it's like, is this guy just, have nothing to do and want to learn about how Formula One works and quizzes you? Because at some stage you need to say, hey, my time is worth also something. It's not like I'm not an entertainer, when you are sitting at home and not knowing what to do, So I always said, I mean, if you don't want to do it, don't worry about me. I try to put it in a positive way. Don't worry about, just tell me, I'm not afraid. If you pass on it, I'm all right. I'm not worried. And after a while I said, Jane, I mean, how long, can we keep on doing this? I mean, we need to come, because the regulation changed, and I was always in contact with FIA and asked them, and with Ferrari, I cannot keep on asking the same question for 5 years, because are you doing it or not? Because everybody was in the same boat, And so at some stage, I think he realized that I got a little bit, it's now enough, as you said, shit to get off the pot, basically. And, he called up a board meeting in his company, and I was part of that board meeting, and I had no warning what will happen there. I would just call a board meeting. All right, I go to a board meeting with the board. I don't know, by the way, and he told them, yeah, this was and some of the people on the board, they didn't really want to go F1 racing, and said, no, we are going F1 racing. That's it. All right, then. And that was like, wow, now I have to actually do some work, just getting a license.
So you think about financial capital, but there's also the human capital. And I would say that you've got a unique managerial style. And some of the interesting aspects of dealing with your team. You're a manager of hundreds of people on that team, ultimately. Drivers who have their own personalities, the engineers that presumably have their own personalities and strengths, and tremendous amount of stress that goes along with there. And one of the things I thought was interesting that you said, when it comes to the stress, like it kind of rolled off your back most of the time, is how you viewed it. Couple different questions here. One of them is just, how do you deal with those stressful situations when you're faced with managing these set of people? They're all looking to you for answers, and you've got to deal with it.
The best is to have an answer for them, but obviously sometimes you don't, But in the end, how you deal with the stress. We said before, I started in 1986 in motorsport. You get pretty thick skin over time, If you do it long enough, like everything in life, the first time something happens to you, you get stressed out. The second time, you're worried, but you don't get stressed out. The third time, it's like, yeah, I had this problem before, I'm gonna sort it, And trying to find a solution to it when it's getting stressy, and always try to have the right people around you. If you employ the right people, then when you can say, okay, I don't have the answer, but I've got somebody I can ask if he can help. That takes a lot of stress away from you. I don't mean putting the stress onto somebody else, but helping you to get over the stress you are having, by giving you solutions.
On that front, in managing a team, how do you balance the delegation versus getting your fingers in everything there?
I don't like to micromanage, because in the end, I always see it like this. If I want to micromanage, I need to manage it myself. That's the much better way. It's more efficient. But then in the end, why do I employ somebody if I want to manage anyway? So, but and you need to find the right people to do this as well, because some people like micromanagement. I don't like that, because, as I said, then you waste too much time in micromanaging somebody, and you're not doing your job, which is macromanaging, So I always try to find people which want responsibility, but which responsibility comes with accountability. You cannot be responsible and then say, when you got it wrong, yeah, but I didn't know what I was doing. No. If you make decisions, you're accountable for them, and we all make wrong decisions, and I can live with that because I make wrong decisions, But if good people don't make a wrong decision twice, that is my principle, Normally they learn out of it and move on. And I always said to people, do what you can do. I'm always there for you, but do not ask me how to do your job, because I employ you to do your job. And in your job, there is something coming up which you need help or something. I'm here for you, but don't call me up to do your daily job, because you only have got jobs. When you take up a job, some stuff, it's actually automatically. It's more like, you do it daily. And sometimes there is a challenge. And if the challenge is there and you don't have the answer, I'm happy to help, but not on your daily job. It's like that you need to do yourself.
One of the things when selecting drivers that I found also interesting is thinking about the team chemistry aspect of it. And you had to make choices of the rock star drivers and who might fit best in the team. How did you think about or identify chemistry, or think about that when you're selecting your drivers, and how much of an effect did that have on the rest of the team? And how did you approach that or identify that even?
I would say with drivers, it's like this, especially if you got a team which is not a winning team, a world championship team, when you try to get the best race car driver for the money you've got, so leave a little bit the personality behind. You don't look in, because that is something you have to manage. But what you want is, because the choice is not too big when you're in the midfield of F1, there is just a group of drivers you can get, and out of that group, for the money you've got, try to get the best one for the best price, and then you deal with the rest of it, so, because otherwise, if you make it too complicated, you get maybe, you want the best driver even if his personality is not right. But with the team itself, because the driver is just a part of the team. I mean, obviously he's a big part of the team, but he's as important as all the other people. While the other people, you more try to find people which can work together. And I was always very, to pick the people for the team. I mean, Haas was the smallest one. We had about 200 people. But I would say I interviewed myself, 95% of the people, myself in the end. But I just did the final interview. And the interview was not if they can do the job, because again, that the manager needs to do, if he can use all the tools we have available to do the job, because I'm not a specialist in that one. But I always just wanted to interview them to find out if they fit into the team as personalities, because if you've got the brightest engineer, which is not capable of working with the other engineers, his value is not there, because you are a team. Then you need to work together and you need to respect each other. And that is the important thing there. So for my interviews, once they went through the interview process, HR, manager, they came to me at the end, and I just interviewed them for 15, 20 minutes and tried to figure out if they've got the right personality, if they want to do, as I said before, they want responsibility, but they need to understand accountability as well. And then I didn't send a lot of people back, but when I sent them back, the people which I sent back, half of them didn't make it in the end, because the managers interviewed them again. I never said no strict away. I said, I don't think this is the right person. Do it again. And as I said, maybe I sent back 1 out of 20, not more, because and then out of them, half of them didn't make it by the manager, not by me. And what it does also, the managers do a better job in interviewing the people, because they know that the person is coming to me before they get the job. So the manager doesn't want to look back and send me people which I don't think they fit the team, because that's not good for the manager. So they put more effort into to interview the people. And we all know a company, the value in it is in the people, nothing else, because we all can buy machines and softwares, but we need the people which work with that stuff. And that is the value in a company, and especially in a race team where it's high pressure, there where you need to invest your time and money in the people.
Did you have a favorite interview question that you kind of used to pry into figuring out whether they would fit the team?
No, I was, but whoever was in front of me, I made it up in front of them, because I needed to see who they were, because I didn't want to go in with already knowing what I'm going to ask. I wanted to see the person and then had them talk a little bit, telling a little bit about them, what they did. And then I came up with the questions. That gave me more information. I had them more talking than I was talking, as much as I talk a lot here in the moment. Well, my daughter is getting pretty bored,
Well, not to bring up a negative personnel situation, but we know that you were purchasing a ham when you were fired from or let go from the Haas team. And tell us a little bit about that side of the experience, because you also had that experience, and the other side of this, and the more positive angle of that is, what do you see as the right way to go about a very difficult conversation that a manager has to have with somebody? You've had it now on both sides of the equation, I'm sure. What do you think is the appropriate way for management to handle these tough conversations?
I start with that one, with the second question, then I go back to my hands, because it's very good to help.
Get the ham if you want.
No, I always think, when you speak, when you let people go, you need to be honest about it. It's sometimes, first of all, if somebody's underperforming, it's not good for the rest of the team, because if an underperformer gets away with it, it's demotivating for the other people, because they think this person doesn't do anything. So why should I work hard, if he gets away with it? So you need to make the decision. And what I would say, 90% of the people I let go, they came back to me or maybe they didn't come back, but I still speak with them. I'm still speaking to those because, I mean, motorsport is not a big community. You know, you run into the people if you let them go a year or a few years later. We still talk and say hello. Obviously, some of them, we are not their best friend, but they are all respectful. And most of the time, you find out if you let somebody go, that they are actually relieved, that they are let go. And then, obviously, in the moment, they get emotional, and it is not nice. But in after 2-3 months, they realized that it was better for them because they ended up in a better place because they were not happy where they were. Therefore, they didn't perform, and therefore they were caught out not performing, and they were let go. You know, so but always do it professionally. You know, and sometimes when you do it, when you let somebody go, when you sit down with them, explain them. Obviously, you've got always somebody with you, you know, to take a protocol about it. But you explain them what wasn't right, and if they get emotional, don't react. Obviously, you know, I mean, that is do not go into a who is wrong and who is right, because people come up with the weirdest things when you let somebody go, and you just said, yeah, here you just take it in, don't give it out, you know. And then most of the people actually are not upset anymore once it's over. Obviously, they take some time for them to find a new job, but if they are any good, they find a new job. You know, I mean, it's always like this. So, and you know, it was similar with me. I mean, I wasn't happy at Haas anymore for a while. You know, and when I had this conversation, for me, it actually was a relief because you know, you don't want to give up on a project because in the end, I invented that project, I made it happen, and you don't want to let go. But then when it was over, I was perfectly fine with it, you know. I mean, and I'm always, you know, it wasn't the first time I was let go, by the way, you know. So, you know, older you get, more times you let go in your life, you know, and you get used to that one as well, with a thicker skin. But one door closes, 2 doors open.
Well, on that point, and I think we'll turn it to audience questions here in a second, so get ready for that. And so on this point, you're moving forward now. It was just announced you're co-owner of a MotoGP team. So that's cool. How do you find the time? You maybe tell us a little bit about what this experience is, and I'm, you know, it's amazing what your time schedule looks like. It's got to be pretty insane.
now my wife's pulls faces, you know. So yeah, it is. But I always like to do something, you know. I always like to come up with ideas. I mean, MotoGP as well. I mean, it just like I got an idea and then said, oh, let's try to do it. And then it happened, you know, and now I'm faced, I need to manage it, you know. So, but there is worse things to do than manage a MotoGP team in life, you know. So I'm pretty happy. But, you know, I just try, you know, I was very fortunate in my life. I would say most of the things I did, I enjoyed to do it, you know. And I know exactly if I don't enjoy to do something, I'm not good at it, you know, because I cannot focus on it. I'm not engaged, you know, and that never lasts, you know. But I know that, so I always try to do something which I like, and I just like challenges as well. I think a little bit addicted to that ones to find always something to do, you know. And just the MotoGP project, it wasn't a long thing. Just I went to MotoGP last year after I think almost 20 years to a race in Austin with my business partner, my other company, my composite company, just for fun because I wasn't there, and I liked it, and I came away and said, oh, that would be cool to own a team here, you know. And then I started to work on it. How do you get a MotoGP team? Found the investment money to do it because obviously I didn't have enough money to buy one, so I got that all done, and then it happened. We made it happen. I made it happen, you know. And you meet a lot of people on the way, and some are good, some are bad, but always you gain on experience, and that I think drives me always to do something. Wonderful.
Thank you so much for the engaging conversation. So now we're open up to the floor for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand, and one of the volunteers will pass the microphone to you. And Professor Minnis, you can pick.
We'll just kind of start left to right here. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Goffredo. I'm from Italy, Verona. I know your home of Milano very, very well.
You can speak Italian, Goffredo.
Nobody will understand me, so I'm going to keep it in English. My question to you was your motivation for that model for Haas, your sort of business model where you're using parts of other manufacturers. Would you say that was kind of learned from the satellite model used in MotoGP, where they take a bike from the earlier year? That's my first question. And then very quick second question is, who was the producer of the carbon monocoque of the Haas, of Romain Grosjean's car in that famous Bahrain crash, which kept him alive, luckily?
I start the second one was pretty easy. The Lara, the company in Parma, which made the monocoque, and they still make the monocoque for Haas. They did it. And to get to your first question, no, the idea came from when I worked at Red Bull in Formula One. At the time, Red Bull bought what was Minardi at the time, and the idea came from there because I did it not the same, but what we did at Red Bull at the time. Because Minardi was that's the smallest team in Formula One. That was beginning of the 2000s. When it was bought by Red Bull, I was in charge of getting that team going. And what we did there, we took a 1-year-old Red Bull car and transformed it into be the next Minardi or Toro Rosso it was called at the time. So I knew that regulation very well, what you were allowed and what you were not allowed to do. And that was the principle of it. And I remembered that one when that came up with the customer cars in F1. So I applied that model to it. There where the idea came from.
Right. Is there something? Yeah, you go there. We'll go ahead. We'll hit this little cluster right here.
Hi, thank you, Guenther. It's been great hearing from someone like you. My question is about Formula One regulations, and in your opinion, how much do changes in regulation really level the playing field for like midfield teams such as Haas?
Changes do the complete opposite. They shake it up again. But I think F1, because it is F1, it always needs to get into new technologies, and that for the regulations need to change. If in F1 you keep the same regulation for a long time, what will happen? The cars will be exactly the same at the end. There will be very minimal differences because there is only, in the end, physically, a best way to make a car go fast. And everybody will go there because they are all intelligent people. But if you change the regulation every 5 years, like it is done normally now, you always, mix it up again. And obviously, then you have got the risk that somebody's dominating because their interpretation of the regulation was better than anybody else, and the other ones have to follow. But if you don't change the regulations, we don't challenge technology. The technology will stagnate because within a regulation you cannot apply different technologies. Like next year, it's a new regulation with the engines. It's complete different. Everything again from what it's not complete different, but very different than what it is now. But also the aerodynamic regulations are completely different because you don't have a normal DRS anymore. You have a reduced track system now because of the engine which need to recharge the batteries. And I think these technologies help also develop road cars, which in the end is good for the normal people, for all of us, for the world. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, the technology which is developed next year is the fuel for the combustion engine, because it will be sustainable fuel, and hopefully they can make it that in future this fuel can be used on road cars, a sustainable fuel. That would be fantastic. But why do they do that? This in F1? Because the oil companies, they are interested to win, to make publicity, so they invest a lot of money into it and can develop it. If you just do it to sell the fuel, nobody will invest millions and millions. They invest it because they want to win. They are interested in technology, but they are not disinterested in sustainability. But winning makes them very interested in it. And then they develop it, and hopefully one day we can industrialize these fuels and make them available for every day.
I think the mic's going to come around over here to this group here. Real quick question on that. What percentage of winning is the driver versus the car?
I always say the best example is to say the worst driver, and there is no bad driver in the moment in F1. They're all very good drivers, but the worst driver can win in the best car. The best driver cannot win in the worst car. So I would say 80% is the driver, 80% is the car, 20% is the driver.
Sure.
Hello, my name's Israel. I'm not a student here, but a very big motorsport enthusiast. I wanted to know, for your driving pleasure, do you have a favorite car? And then what is your favorite generation of F1 cars?
My normal car is a Toyota Tundra. I live in North Carolina. No. When in Rome, behave like a Roman, no? You know, so, and my favorite era of Formula One, I would say, is the mid-70s. You know, the cars were very cool. I mean, they were very dangerous. I know that they were very fast, but it was a cool period. They looked all good, you know, and so I quite like mid-70s. They were very nice cars, in my opinion. You know, it was a new era. They started to introduce aerodynamics and stuff like this. So, and they really started to become F1 cars, in my opinion. Well, go ahead.
Hi, Guenther. Thanks so much for your talk. I'm wondering, you were one of a very small group, like 12 people in the world in this perfect laboratory of competition in Formula One. You know, every weekend, for the most part, you're up against each other, a ton of data. We'd love to have that sometimes in business. But I'm wondering, from your perspective as being one of those 12 people, for the time you were there, who are the other team principals that were respected by everybody and why? Conversely, who were the ones that were least respected?
We don't talk bad things about people. Oh, you know, that's not good to say nothing.
But we're not on Netflix here.
No, I think the most respected people of this generation, I would say the most respected is Toto Wolff. He has got one advantage. He owns part of a team, you know, that makes you already puts in a different league because all the other people is employees, you know. You always have to see that one. I think Fred Vasseur is well respected. He's in racing a long time. You know, even if it is not in F1, in F2, everybody knows him in the industry. So that carries a lot of respect. And it's normally the people which are doing it a long time which are respected, you know. Obviously, Christian had a lot of respect until he didn't have respect anymore, you know. We know all how that went, you know, when he took too many pictures, you know. So, and who else? Now, I think that's about it. I mean, Stefan was well respected in Formula One, and therefore he got the job as a CEO once he left Ferrari. But the team principal job has changed as well. You know, like 10 years ago, there was people more involved in the racing than, you know, and business than it is now. Now the team principals are more like sporting directors than the business managers. There is always, because the companies or the race teams have become so big. I mean, they are $1 billion corporates now, you know. So you know, you need to spread it out a little bit. And normally now the team principal role is done by more operational sporting people than the business people. The business people like Zach Brown is behind the scenes now, you know, a little bit, even if he calls the shots, but he's not in every race anymore.
I'll get the microphone here. A pleasure meeting you here, Wayne Zhang here. Really appreciate your time. I don't know if this is exactly a F1 related question, but I'm wondering how many shots it took you to complete the scene you had in the F1 movie. It was a very serious face you gave us.
Well, they told me it will take me at least 10. It took me 4. Because I debated that with the director, with John Krasinski. You know, I said, how many takes do you want to do? Oh, we need at least 10. After 4, he stopped it. You know? Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick right here, but don't know the second stream.
Hi, Guenther. Thanks for joining us today. My question is, you hear a lot about AI, other new advanced technologies in all sorts of industries. How do you see that being applied in F1 and motorsport in general?
We've got the expert there. How I see it, I would say AI is applied, obviously on a very simplistic for AI, like in the strategy since years. I think AI, obviously, as a future in Formula One. I think in the moment, the biggest future is because you've got so much data in Formula One, you know, and to collect all the data and to analyze it, it's just not possible with humans. There's too much there. And AI can do it. I mean, you know, AI can get all the data and get the best out of it. Obviously, the danger is then, we discussed it before, is that in the end, AI will drive the cars and the human will not come in the game again. But what will happen then? The regulation will be changed, that AI is reduced, that we still have the person making the decisions. Like, you know, like a race car these days, it could be a lot faster. I mean, there was active suspension 30 years ago in Formula One. They banned it because in the end, that would take away the skills of the driver. So you always need to manage, and that's what will happen. So AI will not take over racing or the sport, because I think if you've got an AI race, people would not watch it because there's no personality involved anymore, you know. So I think it will be regulated, that the AI will help to make it quicker. But then if you can see that the AI will take over, you just change the regulation. I mean, you've got it already in aerodynamics, you know, CFD. If you would have endless CFD capabilities, I mean, what could you do with aerodynamics? But it's regulated how much you can use the computer to make to develop the aerodynamics, you know, and that limits it, because otherwise you could come up with 100 people with ideas and just run them to the computer, and the computer will tell you which is the fastest one, but you reduce it, what you can use to develop it. So that is how it will regulate it. So I don't think we have to be afraid that the AI will take over F1 racing.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. My question is, I know we talked a little bit about driver pairings, and right now we have a big race in the championship. So I'm curious, like, when you have really two great drivers that are performing really well, like Piastri and Lando right now, and I guess Ferrari's not doing too hot, but you have Lewis and Leclerc. Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective on how to manage that? And I know you also mentioned that they should be giving a little bit more love to Piastri, so curious about your thoughts.
My thought there is, you know, if you're not going for the championship, you let them race. That is the best way to do it. But like going to your question about McLaren, you know, if you have a risk to lose a championship, you have to favor one driver for the sake of the team, because the team is not only the two drivers, it's hundreds of people in the factory which want to win a championship, which are part of it. And, you know, as much as you think, oh, let them race, at the end of the season, one of the two guys will be unhappy anyway, the loser. So it's just a question of when do you make him unhappy, you know? And that, you know, if you tell him, you know, like with McLaren, if they would have told Oscar, you are now the guy to go for the championship, obviously Lando would have been unhappy. But, you know, now Lando is ahead, but otherwise he would have been unhappy anyway at the end. And the biggest risk is there that at the end of the season you've got two unhappy drivers because they both lost the championship, and then you normally look pretty stupid as a team boss, you know. So, I mean, it will not happen. I think Lando will now, he had good races, the last races, so maybe he can take it home. But for me, it's taking a risk. Because the opportunity to win world championships in F1, there are not many in your lifetime, you know, and when you have got it, you need to make sure that you take it home. And I would never risk that. I would rather have one guy unhappy early, because you will have one unhappy anyway at the end of the season, and do it for the team.
It's I was watching American racing growing up in IndyCar, and that first flavor of F1, that slowing down to let your teammate win drove me crazy. Just like, what is this? This isn't competition. But I mean, when you have to think about the broader set of the team comes first before the drivers individually.
And that, I think, it's the difference in American racing to F1. In American racing, a team is one driver, one car. Because when I came to NASCAR, they talked about a team, and that was one car, one driver. In F1, as a team, you always talk about two drivers, you know. And I think therefore, it is so different in America than the European racing, because the team is two cars in America. And it's like, why you tell this team to stop for that other team? No, they're the same team, you know, in F1. So I think that is the difference. It's just cultural difference, what defines a team.
Yes. I think we have time for one more question back there.
Hi, Guenther. Thank you for coming and taking the time to speak with us today. Earlier, you had spoken about how when you were getting a job for the first time in motorsport, the world was very different. Nowadays, recruiting is a thing. A lot of people are having a hard time finding jobs, especially with AI taking a new role in it. So my question is, for people who are very passionate about Formula One or motorsport in general, what are some ways or some things that they can do, or maybe even just some advice for them to try and get into that space in the first place?
I always think, first of all, study hard, you know. It's good at school, you know, that's a good starting point. And then while you're studying, try to get involved in some kind of racing, whatever it is, you know, as a volunteer on the weekends, just to that you go in there, learn about racing, what you find out if you like it or not, because a lot of people think, oh, F1 is cool, and then they get there and they actually was like, oh, it's just hard work, it's not cool, you know. But you learn that one, And also, the most important thing, you build up a resume, and then when you apply for a job, whoever you apply to, they see that you actually put first some effort in to get where you wanted to get. And secondly, that you like racing and you have got already some experience in it, and I think that's the most important, to build up a resume and not just go in, oh, I studied here, I was the best in class, I want a job now. If you can show that you're the best in class and you worked already in motorsport, in any kind of motorsport, I'm pretty sure you got a good chance to get a job.
Wonderful. So thank you all. That's all the time that we have today. And on behalf of the student community here at U Chicago, I'd like to present a small token of appreciation to Mr. Steiner.
Oh.
Thank you very much.